to the DMF. I am your host, Justin Yachts, and this is episode 91, and this is the wrestling show. So I'm going to talk about the goings-on in wrestling. I'm going to talk about WWE. Well, first I'm going to talk about AEW, then I'll talk about WWE, and then I'll talk about the Booker T biography. I didn't get a chance to see Dark Side of the Ring, so I will talk about that next week. And so those are the things we're going to talk about. So stay tuned. So the first thing we're going to talk about is New Jack. New Jack passed away at the age of 58 due to a heart attack. Now, his name is Jerome Young, and he was born in Greensboro, North Carolina, so he's a North Carolina guy. He really had to start with Smoky Mountain Wrestling. That's where he was like Jim Cornette's guy, and they took advantage of race. Then he came to ECW with the Gangsters, and then he kind of stayed in ECW, and that's where his legend grew. As you had the mass transit incident, you've had, he's a guy who has, not always taken the best of care of guys in the ring. But for a lot of us, we all loved it. When we heard that bullet sound, you knew he was coming in the ring. And you heard the Natural Born Killers from Dr. Dre. And, they would play the whole song while he was wrestling. I mean, you didn't have anything like that. He was an attraction like none other. Even toward the end of ECW, he was one of the best things they still had going. Because I really think we kind of were cheated out of the best of New Jack, because I think New Jack would have been relied on more if ECW went another year, although ECW is going to transition into more of a work rate company. But he always had, he's an interesting character. I mean, he came from bounty hunting, product of the streets kind of guy, not somebody to trifle with. He was, he's an interesting character. I always enjoyed his work. I always enjoyed what he did. He was fun to watch. His promos were great. Even his shoot promos were good. You always had all eyes on him. He was one of the best things in Beyond the Mat, where, they kept calling him Denzel's friend or something like that. He's somebody who used a lot of blood, as you can see from his forehead, that, he cut his forehead so many times that, he kind of got that scarring that you see with Abdullah the Butcher. It's kind of interesting at the end of the documentary Dark Side of the Ring last year's season, New Jack said that he wants to die in a wheelchair with blow with a big giant thing of blow. Cocaine, for those of you not initiated with the drug culture terminology. Apparently his final match was a tag match in Tampa, Florida. So, he was kind of doing indies. He never got to really get to WWE. There were rumors that he was supposed to be a part of One Night Stand, the 05 show, but they couldn't get him there, and I think some wanted him for the 2006 version, but they weren't going to get him there because at that time they were restarting the brand. So he was kind of labeled as unsafe, and a lot of promoters didn't want to take a chance on him. He had, a little bit of stuff in TNA when they had the ECW revival, but, really when you think of New Jack, you think of the original Gangsta in ECW. You think of the music, and you think of the weapons that he would come to the ring with. I mean, he dove from the ring. He's gotten hurt. A lot of blood. I mean, his matches were sometimes really brutal. Interesting stuff, though. I mean, it's sad that he's gone. I mean, in some ways, I'm not shocked. I mean, he just lived such a hard lifestyle. And when you live that hard lifestyle, it catches up to you. I think he was at peace, though, now. He seemed to be very, not willing to want to make headlines like he used to. but who knows? He probably would have done it if he had the chance. But my condolences to his family. I want to talk about him. I really enjoy. He was one of my favorite characters to play in the ECW video game. He just had like such a magnanimous presence. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was really upset when he did not show up at the ECW One Night Stand 2005. I thought if you played that music and he came out, that place would have come unglued. But at that time, it was under the WWE auspices, and there's only so much they were going to allow them to do. It was Paul's show, and Tommy Dreamer were there, and I think Shane McMahon had some stuff. But at the end of the day, it's Vince's thing. So that's the one thing I would have loved to have seen him come out at the Hammerstein Ballroom. As I said, if ECW continued, he would have kind of been transitioned out. Maybe he would have been like the one of like the remaining guys there before because CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Samoa Joe, those guys were coming up, and that was the future. So, I mean, I always liked his moves. I think he did the flying headbutt, the El Kabong, really cool stuff. One of my favorite run-ins was. Let me give you a long story. Here, Anarchy Rules 2000. He's supposed to be the special guest referee, and at one point, it looks like Justin Credible is about to beat Jerry Lynn in his hometown. And right before the ref is able to count 3, the music hits. Here he comes. He beats up the ref, and it's such a cool run in. The fans just react so well, and you see him, and then Jerry Lynn gets the title from ending Justin Credible's reign from April to September. And in those days, you didn't really see long reigns, so it was kind of cool to see him. Really helped establish Justin Credible. Some people didn't like his work. I always enjoyed his work. And then Jerry Lynn finally ending that. But, New Jack was right there. And he was a big part of that match at that ending. And it's one of the best run-ins. I loved his run-ins, but that's got to be one of my favorites. So yeah, I don't know what else to say about. He worked in XPW, Combat Zone Wrestling. The violence, the stuff, but man, his promos were really good. He could just really deliver on that mic. If they just, I don't know if he came to WWE, if that would have helped him, because they would have really shackled him and there wouldn't have been what he could have done. So that's New Jack. Really cool character. I would have loved to have seen him in WWE, but you know what? Some ways I kind of don't want him in WWE. I would have liked him to have had that payday, but I think they would have shackled him. They wouldn't have let him talk. You just give New Jack a mic. That guy can just go off. And I don't know if they would have done that. So I'll leave it at that. Really great stuff for what he could do. He was a character to his own right, and nobody was like New Jack. And anybody that's ever told a locker room story about New Jack, there's nobody like New Jack. He hated Devon. He respected Bubba. He loved Spike. There are guys he didn't like. He's a different kind of guy. But, I think he will be missed. But I think we'll all remember him as the crazy guy that came out in ECW. That's what I think he'll be remembered for. And so now I'm going to transition to something that kind of upsets me a little bit. I see that Dave Meltzer did an interview with Bruce Mitchell. Bruce Mitchell is a historian. He got into a lot of flack for some people thought he attacked Amy Huber, who is John Huber's wife, who's a widow, and was talking about, I don't know. He kind of proposed that things were not exactly as they were, as they seemed. That maybe Brody Lee did die of COVID, and people were appalled by this and upset. And this actually led to his dismissal from PW Torch after 20 years being there. He's gone, and he does an interview with Dave Meltzer and Garrett, and they talk about the A&E documentaries, and they talk about Brian Pillman and they talk about the business, and they talked a little bit about the torch, and apparently everyone exploded, and now it's like it's been taken off of the air. You can't find it. I found it on YouTube. I was watching some of it this morning, and then it was gone, and I had to find it on YouTube. And it's an interesting interview. I mean, I didn't see anything there, but some people don't like it because they don't feel like he's, I don't know, paid his penance for what he has done. I mean, it's journalism. Some things you're going to get right, some things you're going to get wrong, and this mob mentality of jumping on everyone if they say anything that offends you, it's just going to bite us all in the behind if we keep doing this. And that's what I'm seeing. It's going to become a huge problem because nobody's going to be able to say anything. Now, when Donald Trump was taken off Twitter, I understood that because, that was, inciting violence. That was the main reason. But now it's led to everyone, many people being banned off of Twitter. And now we're seeing it's starting to hit the wrestling world. They want now Dave's blood because how dare he interview Bruce Mitchell? They think that he should not have been given a platform. He already has a podcast. I mean, he has his base. I like hearing about Bruce Mitchell because Bruce Mitchell was there when Ric Flair and Steamboat had those amazing matches. He saw some of the matches that, Ric Flair has talked about that he said are better than the 2 out of 3 Falls match, better than the Wrestle War one. So he's got, he's the person that, went through all the title reigns and saw that it was like 20, 21 for Ric Flair, not 16. So he's a huge Ric Flair aficionado. He had, countless knowledge. Jim Cornette hates him. A lot of people in the business hate him. But I've always found his expertise interesting. He always comes at it from an angle I didn't think about. I don't have to agree with everyone to listen to them. And I thought it was a treat to kind of hear him. And now all of a sudden, just no one wants to hear him talk. And now they want, Dave, and they're supposed to be like, it feels like there's a civil war in the figure 4 online. It's like, we don't need that. We don't need things being pulled down. The more you pull things down, the more it's just going to lead to more censorship. So I'm always on the side of not doing censorship, especially with free speech. I think we should have, if you don't like it, don't listen. And people don't like hearing that anymore. Now that's not good enough. Now you should be punished, and you should stay punished. I don't get it. It saddens me to see Bruce feeling this. As I'm just like, I just don't see what he did as that bad. I mean, journalism, you're going to have people that are not always going to agree with what you agree with. And you know what? Journalism is about raising questions sometimes. And you have to be willing to take the questions. And now we're becoming a society where I don't like the questions, so therefore you need to be gone. And I don't agree with that. So I'm on the side of those things. I don't know where I am on the side because, I mean, I don't know. I don't overreact to these things. I kind of take them as they are, and I'm like, here it is. But it just seems like everybody wants to react, and it's like, I see social media as a tool for communication, and I want to hear from everybody as much as I possibly can. But that's me. So enough about me. When we come back, I will talk about AEW. But I had to discuss that in some form of the matter. Okay, so I really enjoyed AEW this week. From Jon Moxley versus Yuji Nagata, that was great. I love the fact that Jon Moxley came out to Born to Be Wild. I think that it was a tribute to Onita. Cactus Jack, I think, used it in ECW as well, and it's a cool song. It adds something to Jon Moxley and his character, and how it is. Now Jon Moxley gets the win. They had a nice match. It was my favorite match, but I like that. I like the fact that the presentation made this feel like a big deal. I feel this strengthens the relationship between New Japan and AEW, and it's only a matter of time. Once COVID is, under control, we'll get the invasion. But Give it time. The other thing I really liked on the show was Pinnacle coming out. They had the girls coming out. You know, he had a crown on, and you know they all gave them watches and everything. It's very reminiscent of The Rock, and he gave all the Nation guys Rolexes, and then he gave Farouk a picture, but they didn't really have the Farouk type thing. It was just kind of the idea. But you know, he's basically saying, "I took Jericho's spot and I did what I needed to do." Then we hear a truck come through. It's Sammy Guevara and I believe Santana. I think Ortiz has been detained, and we find out that Jericho's there, and they spray them with a little bit of the bubbly. It was very reminiscent of Austin beer truck. So they got all sprayed, and MJF got upset, and he said, "Look, we're gonna have you. You won one more match, fine. We'll give you a match, but if you lose, it's you have to disband." And they're gonna have Stadium Stampede. So we got another Stadium Stampede, and if MJF's Pinnacle wins, the Inner Circle has to disband. So I don't see that happening. I think they're going to get the win there. I think it's too soon to go back to this match this quick in the run, but I mean, this is what they want to do, so there you go. Great promo as always from MJF. I thought Jericho did a good job too. Britt Baker did a little sit-down interview with Jim Ross. She comes off very authentic. She puts over Hikaru Shida, who's held the title for over a year. I didn't realize that. So, yeah, it's been a year-long reign. So, I think Britt Baker will probably be the one to defeat Hikaru Shida. I would do it. I think it's time. And then the main event was Miro versus Darby Allin, and this was great. Miro just beat the crap out of Darby, and Darby was doing everything he could to keep on. It wasn't a complete squash, but in some ways it was kind of felt like a squash. But Darby was hurt coming into it, and we see Miro lock that, lock the move in, and that's it. Darby loses, and Miro is now the TNT champion, and I think it's the great way. I think it's a great way to go. Let him become dominant. The way he wrestled was like Brock Lesnar. I think he could be their version of Brock Lesnar. That's the way they should go about him. So that was cool. They got the title change. So I like this episode of AEW. We got a lot of cool things. And the Young Bucks beat SCU, and they have to disband. And Christopher Daniels had a huge accident, and he ended up bleeding like all over. So we had some like unintentional blood, and it was a gusher. But the Young Bucks win with the, it looks like the Kiyogoya that Kota Ibushi uses. But, it's the two knees. And so the Young Bucks retain, and they had like this guy that was spray tanning them. It's funny. Omega, interfered in Orange Cassidy and Pac's match, so that's going to be a triple threat. I hope they do an elimination match. I think that's the way to go. I kind of really just want to see Orange Cassidy versus Omega or Pac versus Omega, but this is the way they're going to go about it. So I don't know. That's a triple threat. I hope it's elimination. That's the only way to do it and make any sense, but we'll have to see. I think this is a mistake. I think they should have gone with Orange Cassidy, but we'll see. Christian Cage is also in the Double or Nothing Battle Royal, so I think he's going to win that, and that will be a title shot for him. And hopefully, my prediction, maybe, is, Daniel Bryan shows up, Omega retains, and the lights go out, we hear Final Countdown, and there is Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, the return of the American Dragon. We have the stare down, and that would be so cool because it was 2 years ago when Jon Moxley debuted. And now let's have Bryan Danielson debut. I think that would be really cool. I'm hoping for that. I don't know, but who knows? It could be. We could get that. I think that would be one of the coolest things they could possibly do. And if they don't do it, they're insane. But, if you don't have the guy, what can you do? So Miro's the champion. Double or Nothing, triple threat. Stadium Stampede, and should be an interesting. It should be an interesting show. Once again, another good Dynamite. And when we come back, I will talk about WWE. Okay, so let's start with Raw. Raw's awful. There's my review of Raw. The only thing that happened is what was it? It was Drew McIntyre and Lashley. It ended when Braun Strowman laid them all out, and they made Braun Strowman look really strong. And that's your go home angle to the pay per view. Who cares? Just awful. I don't care about Raw. I think Raw is awful. Now you got Alexa Bliss who's out there, and apparently Alexa Bliss is oh, it didn't hear me. Well, that's good. So Bliss is gonna transform into like a fiend type character, and it looks like everybody's gonna have to take that seriously. I'm not excited about this pay-per-view, and I'm not excited about Raw. I think Raw is just an awful show that goes nowhere, doesn't do anything, doesn't mean anything, couldn't care less, don't want to see it, don't want to watch it. It's just awful. Just really, really bad. Nothing makes any sense to me, and I just don't care. So there's my review of Raw. Don't watch it. Continue to give them bad ratings because they deserve it. Now let's move on to SmackDown. SmackDown, I'm not exactly. So SmackDown is not exactly a great show, but it's much better. We had, Roman come out. Then first we had Jay come out. Then she introduces Roman, and then comes out Jimmy. Jimmy doesn't want to be a part of the Roman thing. Then Cesaro comes out. That's going to lead to Cesaro versus Jimmy. Okay, great. I guess it's kind of good, but I don't really care about seeing that match. My problem with this whole build-up with Cesaro and Roman is nobody believes Cesaro's going to win, so it's just really hard for me to take any of it seriously. This is a lame duck period for WWE, and it doesn't lead to anything. It just leads to nothing. Bianca Belair, I don't know what is going on with Bianca Belair. It just kind of seems like she's just treading water. Oh yeah, she's going to be wrestling Bayley. Nobody believes that Bayley's going to win, so it's just a lame duck show. Nothing happens. Nothing meaningful is going to happen, and it's just a show. Just a show of a show that goes nowhere and no one cares about. The main event was Cesaro versus Jimmy. They had a good match, and but then it ended in a DQ as usual. Roman Reigns and a bunch of stuff, and Cesaro left standing. So it looks like Cesaro is going to win, but no, he's not going to win. So I don't know. This pay-per-view just seems so lame duck to me. Calling it WrestleMania Backlash is an insult to WrestleMania because it just means nothing. I gotta say, it's really sad that Edge came back, killed himself to get back early so that he could win the Royal Rumble and lose and turn heel and lose at WrestleMania, and nothing means anything. And it's just a countdown to Roman versus, I guess, Jimmy will be the next planned thing, and then Brock, and then Rock. Ooh, can't wait. Can't wait to see nobody get over. It's just horrible. I'm so bored. WWE is just so boring. They do absolutely nothing, and they don't care that I don't like what they're doing. I just found out that Pat McCaffrey was going to do. He shaved his beard so that he could do a segment for Vince McMahon. Then they scrapped it. It's like I don't know who they think that you can't treat people like that, and they think they can treat people like that. And I think it's appalling, and I think it's insulting. We may have some whereabouts of where Bray Wyatt is. Bray Wyatt possibly asked for time off. We don't know, but yeah, Bray is. Maybe that explains why he lost at WrestleMania. I don't know. I just don't know where any of this is going. I don't know where anything's going, and it's not interesting. I can't wait to find out what's going on. It's like I have no faith in this company that anything is going to happen. I like Roman, but that's it. I don't feel like he has any feuds. There's no interesting matchups. There's no interesting matchups on either brand. It doesn't matter. What's his name? Aleister Black might be coming back. I don't have any faith in anything this company does. It's just going to mean nothing. So it's hard for me to care. Roman's great. He's the best thing on the show. And after that, nothing else happens. I think Dominic and Rey Mysterio win the tag titles on Sunday. We don't know. We'll have to see. That's my review of WWE. It's awful. I think NXT's boring too. So, I mean, there's nothing in WWE. Watch NXT UK. They're pretty good. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about the Booker T A&E biography. So let's talk about the Booker T documentary. I like this one. Some people didn't like it. Some people felt this was the weakest one, but this one had the most of a storyline arc. They showed him, as a boy, I didn't know that at 13 he lost his mother. That has to be devastating. So he had to, pretty much grow up without a maternal figure. And his, sister, and, he got into a lot of, a bad scene in Houston. And then he ended up, robbing Wendy's, and they ended up robbing it 26 times. They just kept robbing it until, basically they put 2 and 2 together, and, and he got a 5-year, he took a plea deal, he got 5 years, and he got out in 18 months. So hats off to him. I mean, he really applied himself, and he got his GED, and, he showed that he was willing to return to society. He got a security job, and then they found out that he was a felon, and they took that away from him. And then he had this friend who he was cleaning out storage facilities, and that's kind of the guy that helped him get into wrestling school. They made a fun. I'm missing out one of the best. He had a son while he was in jail, so he wanted to get the son out of foster care or whatever. So he had to prove to the court that he could hold down a job and that he could they could raise his son. And he fought really hard for that. He ended up having to steal from crack dealers or from a crack den, stash. And so he went through a lot. They talked a little bit about racism in wrestling, when he was first starting out, how he's called, every name in the book. Talked about him getting trained by Ivan Putski. They talked about WCW and Harlem Heat. And Harlem Heat, they talked about the music, which is really cool, that music. And then they kind of jumped to his world title reign, which I got to say, I'm upset. How can you miss out on one of the best things that he did was the TV title? He made that title mean something. Him and, sorry to say, but Chris Benoit, their best of 7, their matches were like carrying that show sometimes for 3 segments. They had such amazing matches. They just went out there and wrestled. And then you got Fit Finlay in there, and, he made that TV title mean something. When Book had it, he won it by accident, but, he got that singles career. And then they jumped to his world title reign. They don't really talk about it in depth the way they should. And then they talk about WWE and how, this is the land of WWE. You got to do things our way. And that thing, we did everything right. And I guess it was a good thing that Rock came out and said, who are you? Which to me is could you have buried him anymore? Could you have buried him anymore? So they, they just, it's a lot of their apologetic thing. And they're like, when he was being misused, as far as I'm concerned, he was very much misused in the beginning. And, that was no, that was the right. They didn't even get into WrestleMania 19, although David Dennis Jr., he said he talked about it, but they didn't use any of that footage. What a surprise. They're not going to put that on there. They just ran away from a lot of things. They didn't tell the complete story of Booker T, as usual. They always have to... The company looks strong, and it's, that's why these documentaries are mediocre to me, because they're not going anything that makes WWE not look good. It's not in there, and it's just fluff in some ways. But I enjoyed learning about that. They talked about Charmel and meeting her. Then they talked about King Booker, which I thought was good, but looking back at it, it's like he didn't need a gimmick to be that kind of character. If you guys just left him alone and not buried him, he could have been that. But the King Booker character was great. That was one of the best things he did do in WWE, because they, treated him like that. They, treated him like a top guy. So, he was the one that ended, he ended Rey Mysterio's championship. Yeah. But yeah, the King Booker thing, that was a great gimmick. They didn't talk at all about TNA, and then they talked about coming back in the Hall of Fame and how just what wonderful thing. They talked about his school, which is great. I think that's great about his school, but it misses a lot of elements that would have made it feel great. His TV title reign was one of the big things that really got everybody really looking at him. They blazed through ECW in like almost 10 minutes. I mean, making these things 2 hours and just really it's just an hour and 20 minutes. You can't tell the complete story. And then they shy away from things that make their company look bad. So I don't know what to say. It's disappointing to me. But I'm glad that he's happy at this stage in his life. They said that now that he has, now at this stage of his life, he can be a better father to his kids. But yeah, I thought book came off good, and it was good. It was good. I mean, it's entertaining, but I would have liked. They could have gone so much more in depth, and they just don't. Dark Side of the Ring does that, and these A&E documentaries don't. And with that, so I would say I recommend watching it. If you got 2 hours you want to blast through, or an hour and 20 minutes if you've DVR'd it, go watch it. But yeah, it's good. Good stuff. Overall, I wanted more, but overall good. I thought it was, I liked, my favorite has been the Piper one, then the Macho Man, then the Booker T one, and then Austin one. The Austin one was just, you learn nothing that you didn't know already. It's just fluff pieces, and a lot of these are just fluff pieces, so. And with that, I will let it go. I want to say thank you for listening. As always, you can reach me at Justin Yance, and I will see you next time on the DMF.